Coming up in the latest episode of Netball Unlocked, we review round 3 as Lightning and Forest stay perfect and Loughborough get the tactics board treatment from Chloe. We touch briefly on the England Roses and Jess Thirlby's parting of the ways. We check in on the start of the SSN season as well and take a look ahead to round 4. Hello and welcome along, Chloe Merrill, alongside me, Paul Prendeville. You've probably already heard us if you get to this, because if things have gone well, we'll have edited and turned around an Emergency England episode. Chloe, it appears never a dull week.
Right. What a time to be alive and to have a netball podcast, Paul.
I'd like to think we were there early, right? We welcome our podcast friends who've joined us this season, but we've been grinding. We've been waiting for these moments. We've been waiting for this drama.
So much drama as well. When you think back to last week when Jodie and I were dealing with a really thorny issue, and then Here we are talking about England having a new interim head coach going into a Commonwealth Games in just over 4 months' time. Absolutely. It's just insane, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll let everyone dive into the episode, but just very briefly, for anyone who doesn't listen to the episode, Jess has stepped away from the England role due to personal reasons. Anna Stembridge steps up from assistant coach. She'll have Olivia Murphy, who comes across from Lightning on a secondment, Joe Harton, and who have I forgotten? Because I've literally just read it. Shani Layton, of course. How could I forget? Who will be part of the coaching staff. Unless we forget, Chloe, this is 4 months out from a Commonwealth Games and just over a year and a half from a World Cup. It's a pretty dramatic move from Jess and from England, whatever the reasoning.
Yeah, I called it in the episode seismic. I stand by that. I think that is absolutely the word. And there's lots of questions, lots of curiosities around it that we kind of get into, but not least because Anna Stembridge has been an England head coach in the past and was dismissed in the past. So a lot for the England players in our league to have to deal with, for sure, going forwards. And yeah, it feels like the stakes are quite high.
Yeah, and to echo what I said in the episode, we have reached out to England Netball. We're hoping to speak to someone there from the support staff in time. That's going to be ongoing over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll have some decent information, something interesting to get stuck into. Now, before we get stuck into round 3, some admin. I don't like to do this all the time, and I tend to save it for the end, but a couple of landmark moments for us. More than 1,000 followers on Instagram. Chloe, you take all the credit there for some fine work over on the IG, as I believe they say. And next target, 1,500. YouTube almost up to 150. And as we've said, we have ambitions there, but at the moment, our job is to do our jobs and then record this in between. So we're grateful to those of you who listen on YouTube. And our Unlocked Fantasy League is up to 38 people, Chloe, which is great to see. And I think you'll kind of echo my thought. We're so grateful to the growing Unlocked family, which we can call it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fantasy crew in particular because they get to see us doing quite well.
For now,
said with a villainous laugh. No, it's been really cool. Thank you so much to everybody for the comments as well, for the nice messages that we get. It means so much because, as you said there, Paul, we do this in between our own jobs. It's a big old passion project, and it's just really nice to know that people like what we do. And I think Jodie Gibson, Paul, was a massive hit. So thank you to Jodie for her time, because we were at it last week for quite a long time. But we really appreciate our guests too that come on and give us a lease of life when they do.
Yeah, Jodie was brilliant. I listened while I was kind of running around last week. I had a lot to do with NFL free agency. So I was working late shifts for most of last week. And also had to take Kira to a couple of netball matches and whatnot. So Jodie, far smarter than me when it comes to netball, and it was great to listen to. It was great to listen to her. She was great, and hopefully we'll get her back on as the season wears on. Chloe, I popped down in the running order. The SSN started this weekend. Now, I didn't see any of it because I was working over the weekend, but you have caught up on a few bits and bobs. What caught your eye? I think might be the start of a new segment. What caught Chloe's eye in the SSN this weekend?
Oh, it's like Christmas for all of us that celebrate SSN. Yes, season number 10 of SSN. It feels crazy that we've got here, but fantastic. That a big milestone for the league and for what it's putting out there. I think top line, 19 player debuts across the 4 games, 3 new head coaches. So it's churning and it's turning. I absolutely have to start off with a guest of the podcast, Elmarie van der Berg. Norma Plummer really sung her praises, and my word, she delivered. She was so special. In a thorny game against the New South Wales Swifts, she hit, and the team then hit, a bunch of records. Most goals in a quarter, 18, and she did that twice. Club record of 59 goals by an individual in a game. And we should say that this is a club that's had Romelda Aiken-George in it, and led the team to its highest ever score in the SSN with 74 goals. She just looked so at home. Such a credit to the recruitment, really, by Adelaide Thunderbirds, plus Kate Heffernan with Georgie Horges, just looked really good. And they really looked like the product I think everybody was expecting the Thunderbirds to be, which is sort of now the title favourites. Obviously, the season is long. Everybody will watch that video and there will be some work to be done on Elmarie. But, big congratulations to her on a sensational debut. Elsewhere, Paul, if I may, I'll crack on.
Of course.
Melbourne Mavericks beat Giants. A big outing for Jamie Lee Price, the Australian Diamond. She there's a clip of her, Paul, that she takes this unbelievable intercept and then just yeets it into Unique Pallavi, who was really great. So that was really cool. Worst start to the season for the Swifts against Thunderbirds, I should add. Helen Housby looking a little bit like she's struggling, which England fans will probably want to keep an eye on, see how she goes. Opening game. And she's just come off a busy international, as we've said, for all of our England players over here. It will be interesting to see how she goes. Vixens beat the Firebirds to start their Premiership defence off with a win. 3 Kiwis in the Firebirds, the Fire Ferns, as they have been dubbed. So that's been interesting to see how that goes. Mary Chollock still sort of struggling a little bit with her accuracy under the post. So that'll be one to track. And then the Fever, Paul, upset Lightning 68-65, and we call that an upset really because the Fever are battling injuries. They're looking a little bit like how Thunder started last season. Really, really great performance from Rose's captain, Fran Williams, in that game. And Romelda Aiken-George, her 4th club in her 19th season, notched a career best 54 goals. How about that for longevity?
I think I
so that's the wrap up.
Yeah, I think I like what Chloe spotted in the SSN. I caught bits and bobs, usually kind of being dragged around all over the place, and I don't get a chance to watch as much SSN as I like. I tend to try and watch some extended highlights where I can. But I think a really interesting first week of the season. I think that's what we can take away from that. Lots of talking points and perhaps the occasional surprise, as you alluded to in there, and it will be interesting to see how that shakes out. I thought it was interesting to note no Gabby Sinclair as well. We saw her over here last year. I think we kind of thought we might see her again in the UK, but no, she wasn't able to play for Lightning. And I think I saw a little bit of chat about kind of concern about how long she might be out for as well. So something to keep an eye on, much like we will across the course of the season. Before we get into game by game stuff from the Super League, any big picture stuff from you before we get into the games?
First big doubleheader, think it looked good. The production that Sky put out was more like what I hoped we would be seeing. So, to have that sort of almost courtside studio set up and 2 really great games as well, particularly the second one. It's nice to see that a game like Lightning and Pulse gets the billing that it deserves as well. I think that was really good. And as I said to Jodie, the Motorpoint Arena had 3 games. So it was a busy time for the Motorpoint Arena. But it is a great stage that we have. So I think we should use it, and it was well used. How about you? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think week 1, didn't I called out the fact that I thought the opening game of the season warranted more than just like a little 5-minute build-up for Thunder versus Pulse, but also the fact it was the first game of the new season. I know we came off the back of the Super Cup, but I think when you can elevate your sport, you have to take the opportunity to do it. And obviously over the last few weeks, I think I've seen called out. It wasn't something I was overly familiar with, but like there's a tiered structure to the games in the Super League, and that doesn't always mean interviews are required. So, which I won't get into now, but I think is very disappointing considering there are cameras and presenters on site at every venue. But I do think the overall product at the weekend looked really good. The Motorpoint is a really good venue. I've been there for a few different sports. It looks great. And I think, the full kind of shebang, if you like. 2 good games, good crowd. And you've alluded to this, Chloe, like the match-going punter sometimes needs more than one game because netball can be over pretty quick, right? Like, so to have back-to-back games and to have back-to-back good games, I think was a really good thing. And yeah, just overall a really polished product. And it just makes it a little bit frustrating when we go back to sort of iffy streams, if we go back to iffy streams that don't always look as polished as they should. Yeah, good start for the doubleheader would be my suggestion. It looked good. We've got a couple more to follow over the course of the season, and I'll be interested to see how they shake out. But shall we get on with it? Shall we get into the big game? And there's only one big game.
Yeah, let's go.
So biggest game of the weekend came on Saturday evening. Loughborough Lightning versus London Pulse, the champions last season, and a repeat of the grand final. Both teams came into it 2 wins out of 2, but it's Lightning who take the win, 68-61, just pulling away at the end to which denied Pulse a bonus point, and we will always say this, but those bonus points might be important. Lightning just pulled away, but a good game. So many different and intriguing battles all over the court. Before we get into the details, team news, still no Beth Durrant for Lightning, and Shadeen van der Merwe started over Selena Appleby-Prince. I thought that was quite significant, which we might get into. And for Pulse, Tyler Raw made her first start with Gracie Smith on the bench. Gracie came on. But yeah, over to you, Chloe.
Over to me. Well, I think big picture takeaways on this game. I think Jodie and I both kind of called that Lightning would take this one. And it was really interesting the way it played out, particularly that first half. And the super shot usage in this game was really interesting as well. But it felt like Pulse they're very instinctive and they're very good at just sort of picking up what they find and getting it to goal. Lightning looked to me from the very first centre pass, which I'll come to show you, incredibly structured. They were incredibly ready for what Pulse had to throw at them, and then kind of built and built and built. And the scoreline actually got, I think, up by 12 at one point, that Lightning were ahead of Pulse, and Pulse pulled a change. They came back into it. It did then feel a bit touch and go. But then Lightning able to again use that super shot. They use it so effectively, and they are still remain to be stopped on that front. And actually, the big one for me that I thought in terms of big picture, Pulse still haven't won a fourth quarter in this season. The defending champions are struggling to close out games, which is a curious thing given the kind of mindset that Hallie Adio sort of spoke about in the first round. That what's the word? Not dominate. It begins with A.
It was
Annihilate.
a mercy mindset. Annihilate mindset was what she said
Annihilate
last year.
mindset. Yeah. So interesting. Anyway, let me chuck it to you and then we'll go to the clips. I want to know what you think first.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that, because I actually think if the Thunder game and the Dragons game, I thought Pulse were pretty much in control, and it was really like that super shot shooting at the end of the game, which can really make a significant difference, right? I think that pulled Thunder within enough to get a bonus point, and it did the same for Dragons. So I wouldn't read so much into that. But I do think, as far as the game was concerned, I thought the selection of Shadeen van der Merwe suggested that Lightning were perhaps going to try and go a little bit more down a more physical route. And I think that was evident. Alice Harvey was quite dominant. She took home player of the match honours. And I think Shadeen did enough to sort of maybe knock Sophie Kelly out of her stride early on. And as you rightly pointed out, Pulse came back into it. I thought Maseko continues to grow into her role in this team. And I think what we'll be very keen to see is maybe when we see her injected into the starting lineup and what she can offer over a full 4 quarters. Really good game. I think Lightning are really, really smooth. And I put my hands up in round 1 and suggested that I had completely forgotten, for whatever reason, what shuffling back rather than shuffling forward would do to Lightning. And with that, I mean the use of Nat Panagari at wing defence. And I thought she was outstanding. I thought she was really strong, dominated in that area of the court really, really well. And I think it just set a tone for Lightning. And whilst Pulse got in front early, once the super shot turned that around for Lightning, they were able to kind of control the game from there.
Yeah. Okay. I think that you'll see why Shadeen is able to do what she did. And I think Alice as well, because it was set up for them to succeed. And if I do
Chloe, you're going to teach me.
if I do my job properly, and there's a little bit of confirmation bias. I'm acutely aware of what I've picked out at one point is a bit like that. But I've tried to do, it is predominantly defense, but there's a little bit of attacking in there because I'm expanding what I'm capable of. I'm pushing my limits. But yeah, actually, we should say on the performance of Shadeen and Alice Harvey, just to start. Shadeen Fadamerva, 8 gains, 2 intercepts, 2 deflections. Alice Harvey, 5 gains, 2 intercepts, 6 deflections. Alice on 15 penalties, Shadeen on 10, and no unforced errors out of Shadeen Fadamerva as well. So really showing her quality, absolutely. Ella Clark, and still on 100% shooting stats. Anyway, we'll get into that. Right, let me get my clips up. Okay, great. So, as ever with my clips, I will do my best to describe them to those listening. This is a better experience if you can watch it. But really, Paul, what I wanted to show, as I alluded to, is the structure that Loughborough Lightning put on in the early stages of this game and throughout the first, second and third quarters particularly. And the reason why I think it's important is because Lightning were able to consistently and constantly apply the pressure on Pulse. Particularly, we know that the attack can be, it wants to be quick, it wants to punish, it wants to go straight to goal. So can you hold it up, can you slow it down, and can you find moments to pick off the ball? And actually what Lightning do so well is they use the box against Pulse, and to great effect. But the instigation of it comes so clearly from the centre pass defence from the first and second phases. And then also I'll pick out an example of why the pressure then works, because actually just, I think Alicia Scholes just gets really frustrated with it and it works. And I should say, I actually had 11 examples of what I'm about to show you, all that lead to a deflection or a gain or a pickup. So this really was consistently put on throughout the game. And what is really interesting in the first quarter was that Lightning didn't capitalise that early on these little wins that they had. They actually coughed up a bit of ball. So the first quarter starts with Pulse going into the lead in the super shot period. But then Lightning obviously pull on their super shot power, and they then reapply what they've done in the first quarter again in the second and use that to really get a foothold in the game. And I think if you can lead London Pulse, you're in a really good place. And that's what Lightning obviously did. So this is hilarious because the first two I wanted to show you are literally off the first two centre pass defences that Lightning have to do. I've slowed it down. But yeah, anybody that's heard me talk about the box before will be familiar really with what I'm going to point to. All right. So as you can see already, you can see 3 Lightning players over the line, and that's what they're going to want to do because they want to try and stop Tyler Orr and then later on Gracie Smith delivering quickly that first phase. So as planned, Tyler Orr releases the ball behind to Zara Everett. And as you can see, as I pause it here, you've got Shadeen Fadamerva at the front, over the transverse line, on her own in acres of space. You've got Jess Shaw holding Sophie Kelly out on the sideline. And that means that Liz Scholes can't give that ball straight out that she wants to give. She wants to release that ball really quickly. She can't do it. She gives it out to Sophie Kelly. And then look, Paul, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the Lightning box. And all the Pulse players are not ball side. So if you consider that Sophie Kelly is the ball carrier, if there is nobody, Sophie hasn't got that straight pass forward to Liv Sheen. She hasn't got that pass forward either to Tyler Orr. So Liz Scholes is going to come up to try and receive that small pass. And Jess Shaw is going to do that job of pushing her really in, as we talked about with Thunder. This is Pulse in that game. Force her right in. So it's a tiny ball. And then the box is going to move. It's going to stay as a box. So Shadeen sees Sophie Kelly try and run through it. So she's going to pick her up. So the box keeps moving. Again, can you see that? Perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's gone back up to the transverse line. Ella Clark's gone, I'll have a go at that. Can't quite reach it. So then Sophie Kelly drives through the box and Shadeen comes, bang, I'll have that. Now, she doesn't actually get that ball, but the disruption is there, right? She's gone, the box has worked. This is where I come to pick off the ball, and she gets it off Sophie Kelly. Okay, so this is Pulse get that to goal, and then Lightning have their centre, and that's been scored. So then Pulse are back again. So this is their second centre pass, and Lightning are going to do the same thing again, right? 3 over the line, as you can see. Liz Skulls is not going to get that unless with an awkward little back cut. And it was actually a 3-second ball. That's it, turnover. Because that first centre pass defence is already really effective. So I'll put it through again because I really like this one. 1, 2, 3, up, pressure on. Skulls catches it, 3 seconds, cold. And one more example again of this 3 over and this slowing up of the centre pass to then set up the box. Sophie Kelly gets that ball, but that's okay because Shadeen, Jess are over the line, and Nat Panagari as well. So they're going to come find the shape, there it is. So Jess Shaw is going to push Sophie Kelly out. Tyler Orr is already there. Shadeen is in that bottom corner on the top of the circle, and Alice Harvey is right up with Liv Cheen getting in front. So look at that ball here that Scholes wants to give. She's going to have to, because everybody is behind their players, she's going to have to give it to Fumi Fidoju on the transverse line. And that's a horrible ball to give because it's lateral and she's not bullseye, and it has to go over the top of Hannah Joseph. Awkward. So Fidoju's going to get challenged all the way by Hannah Joseph. She's got the hop. She takes the pass. And then look at that acres of space in the middle. Nobody's in it. Van der Merwe is going to follow up on Sophie Kelly. So the ball goes back, across the court, all the way to Zara Everett. Acres of space, no one in the middle. Horrible scenes. Zara Everett goes lateral to Fidoju, who can't see anything. No one is anywhere. She's going to go all the way back. This is at 4-6, right? All the way back to Haliadio to reset. Because she's like, right, everybody, somebody come present. Scholes comes running in. Okay, that's an easy option. But then look, again, acres of space, no one in it. Sophie Kelly's driving forward. And this is the trap, because look who's on her shoulder. Shadeen, Van der Merwe follows Kelly all the way up, tracks her as she cuts back. 1, 2, 3, up in the air, Van der Merwe. So that's the second time. Third moment that Van der Merwe has been involved in what is essentially a turnover or a turnover situation. And we are 9 minutes down. No, 9 minutes left of the first quarter, right? Crazy level of pressure. 5-9, right? This is again just 3 minutes later. Pulse centre pass, Tyler Orr desperate to get it off quickly. Liz Scholes has to come through, almost a port because she's being squeezed in. She receives that centre pass, but really high. She wants to release it. She's bored of being held up. This box, it's really annoying. And then she's going to absolutely send it because she's got that connection with Liv Cheen. But look who's going to get that. Bang, Alice Harvey. Just comes across the front of Liv Cheen, steals that. Excellent. Big win for Alice Harvey, and not her only win, obviously, of this game. One final one, and I just wanted to illustrate that this really was throughout each quarter. This one's in Q3, and it's Kamala Khaloa Maseko is on at this point as well. So even if you change the personnel, Lightning is still going to put on the same defense in their centre pass. So everybody over the line, and then Maseko decides, right, well, I can see Scholes as being monster as she goes forward, so I'll hang back. Van der Merwe clocks that. See already she's gone for the back cut, and she's going to compete with Maseko for the ball, and it's out of court, Lightning ball. So she's done well to compete for that, Shadeen. But you can see she's involved in all of this, and she's involved in all of this deliberately because it's all been set up for her and Alice Harvey to find the pickings. So Bucks being used against Pulse, you love to see it. Lightning have gone, you know what, you've used this against everybody, we're bored of it, we're going to use it against you. But Paul, do you remember when I unpicked Pulse before in their defence, one of the things that when we talked about that game that struck me was the amount of pocket ball that Pulse go for, particularly Gracie Smith. She's a fan, but Liz Scholes as well, right? They like to go and really take themselves into the pocket. And the pocket is always a risk because you are surrounded by the sideline and the back line. And this is something that Lightning definitely did their homework on. Alice Harvey came out and got a lot of pocket ball, but so did Van der Merwe again. And I wanted to sort of draw out 2 examples of that to show you that, again, this is a team that's done its homework. It's ready to roll. So this is a pulse centre pass. And we've talked about this being a really frustrating event every time that Pulse have to do that because of the pressure that Lightning put on. So again, this is another frustrated centre pass from Pulse. And you can see also the super shot period is about to come in 20 seconds. So the urgency to get the ball down is really there. So Tyler Orr, again, cannot give that first phase presented by Liz Scholes, who, to her credit, keeps trying. And so she gives it to Fumi Fadoju behind her. She's going to pick it back off her. At this point, Scholes has gone, okay, look, I've lured out Van der Merwe with me, and now all this space is behind me, and it's behind me all the way to the pocket, right? Is it? Because that is a bread and butter backing up for Van der Merwe, who steals it. Now, she doesn't keep the ball, but the threat is there. Here's another pocket steal that I really liked. This was also in quarter 2, slightly earlier on in the quarter, actually. Scholes manages to come up for that first phase. Nat Panagari doesn't go with her. Instead, Nat Panagari is going to direct traffic. And she's going to say to Jess Shaw, hold up, Tyler. I've got Scholes. Scholes has had to send the ball out laterally, so let me pick her up. And then Scholes gives it to Fadoju, and Fadoju's looking down, and she can see, again, in that square, empty space. Fadoju's looking forward, gives it back to Scholes, and Scholes is right up, tucked up in the transverse line, gives it back, and she's pointing. She's like, give it to the other side. Send it away. I don't want to see it. Let me go get free. So Zara Everett looks around, can't do it because Tyler Orr is being tracked. So she gives it back to Fadoju, so no ground is made. Fadoju looks again, has to give this lateral ball, which you can see Ella Clark is like in a space to be able to get. Goes over the top of Ella Clark. Zara Everett has to go up for the ball. Zara Everett, again, facing a difficult scene, nothing in the middle. Goes back over the top of Fadoju, not ball side, risky lateral pass, and Fadoju goes, right, I've had enough, and Scholes is driving to the pocket. That's normally a ball I like to give. Alice Harvey says, nope, got that. So, pockets aren't safe. And then Fadoju actually, it's a pickup that kind of Harvey kind of gets, throws, Fadoju knocks it off court. So yeah, definitely ending up Lightning ball. So that's the defence. It was ready in so many ways for London Pulse. And the way it accumulates is really tiring. And here, Paul, I actually wanted to look a little bit at that. This for me was quite important to the way the game unfolded. Was the first quarter where Lightning get ahead of Pulse using the super shot. Lightning have been using the super shot incredibly in a way that punishes teams. Even when they've done so well in the 10 minutes, Lightning are just going to go, doesn't matter because we could do this. And that's going to be something all the clubs are going to have to really tackle with psychologically as well as on the court, because it can be quite demoralising when you've played a good 10 minutes of netball. I'm thinking here of Leeds Rhinos last week. They did really, really well until the super shot period of the second quarter came. But this is how Lightning are actually going to get ahead of Pulse, and then they're going to stay for the whole game in front of them. But this was a really untidy super shot period for Pulse, I found. I think Hallie Adio gives away 2 penalties and to Samantha Wallace-Joseph, and you can't do that. You really, really, really have to be disciplined, particularly when she has a hot hand. And then also, so we'll just show you that, but also some of the ways that Lightning actually structure themselves to do the super shot. Because Sam Bird actually, in her timeout, she sort of gave a bit of a clue of like one goes front and one sweeps. So draw, and then the person goes out to the corner that's not what these guys do, but that is a classic sort of how to set up a super shot opportunity. Here is an example of Wallace-Joseph and Clark pulling the defenders apart. So there's 2 options. So that's just going to be, split the defence, classic, right? Because when Hannah Joseph looks into the circle, Samantha Wallace-Joseph is about to present at the front, but also Ella Clark has the corner, and she's a basketball shot, so why wouldn't she want the corner? But then here, Adio gets all tangled up in Clark, trying to get in front of her to deny the front. and that she's going to get penalised for that. So that's one of those where it's like, you're 2 goals up. Why would you give Loughborough Lightning a free shot at goal? And Ella Clark says, oh, you know what? I'm going to lay that off to Samantha Wallace-Joseph because I can, because you've given me that opportunity. And Wallace-Joseph's going to put it up. That makes the game 14-all. So, frustration. Here is another one where the centre pass defence from Pulse was just disorganised. Because Fumi Fidoju was well over the line, and she shouldn't be well over the line during a super shot period with 2 unbelievable super shot shooters capable behind. But Ella Clark, she's not even near Ella Clark. Ella Clark's out on the corner of it, just barely over the transverse line. And you can see just in the corner of your frame, Hallie Adio is out the circle. So Hannah Joseph, with her elbows bent back, is about to give a monster pass all the way across to Samantha Wallace-Joseph in the circle, in the super shot zone, exactly where she wants it, totally by herself. She gives it out into Jess Shaw, and that's another super easy super shot for 16-all. So that's another one where the communication between the defence during a super shot period has to be on. It has to work, especially against a team like this. Finally, so it's 16-all at this point. We've had a bit of a super shot off. And then here, you're going to see a nice screen. Ella Clark is going to screen off Hallie Adio. So Hallie Adio is on Samantha Wallace-Joseph. A nice biff there by Fumi Fidoju to keep Ella Clark off the circle edge. So Ella Clark says, that's fine. I'm going to come in round the back of Wallace-Joseph, and Wallace-Joseph is going to present at the front. So they do a nice switch, 1 in, 1 out. Wallace-Joseph gives it to the person that she always cites the most, which is Hannah Joseph. Hannah Joseph is in the pocket. She's got the ball nice and easily there. And then here, watch Ella Clark. She's got already Fumi Fidoju on her, and then Hallie Adio is at the top of the circle. Samantha Wallace-Joseph is going to re-enter the circle, and Ella Clark is just going to say, nope, Adio, you're not going to go there. She's going to have all that space. It's a classic basketball screen here, Paul. And then bang, over the top to Samantha Wallace-Joseph, who puts this one in no sweat. So I feel that, and that puts Lightning ahead 18-16, and I believe they take that quarter 20-16, if I'm not wrong. And then that's the start of the game. Now, it's easy to look back on this. I suppose this is where my bias is, because I know that they go on to win, and the game is not decided in the first quarter. But as I said to you in there, I do think psychologically letting Loughborough in the first quarter have an easy super shot period is just not where you need to be if you really want to take out this team. That is not really going to give you that much. So that's my picky bits for today.
Good picky bits. I think it's a really good observation. I'm pleased, again, you tend to do this, back up the point that I'm trying to make, but I can never do it as tactically smart as you, that I thought Shadeen was really influential in sort of how she played and where she played, and to see it play out that way was good. There was also something I thought was quite noticeable from Vic Burgess after the game, where she gave Joe Tripp an awful lot of credit for how they played defensively, and I think that might be another sort of underrated kind of off-season movement. We know Joe left Panthers. There was a school of thought she might be going back to New Zealand, but she's come in and it looks to me like she's had a kind of significant impact on the defensive end as far as Lightning are concerned. And I think your point is a good one. Getting in front for Loughborough is a big deal when you can shoot as well as they can shoot, right? Because there was nothing in that first quarter. It was pretty close. You highlighted before you kind of went into the detail that Loughborough made a few mistakes. There were some scrappy moments from both teams, but Pulse had sort of arm wrestled their way in front, and then to sort of give Lightning that sort of attempt to double it up every time. And I think in the end, I did make some notes on this. I thought super shot shooting was 36-24, and that is an awful lot easier to do when you have a lead. Also, when you have an international basketballer and Sammy Wallace-Joseph as your 2 options, clearly. But I think you're a bit freer. There's slightly less pressure. We spoke about this an awful lot last year when you're chasing a game and you have to make 2, as opposed to when you're in front and you can kind of pick your moments when to take 1, when to take 2. And it does look to me at the moment, certainly, that Lightning have found a way to master that. And I think Sammy Wallace-Joseph, we obviously know she came in last year after quite a bit of injury problem. She looked fit. She looks really fit and she looks really fluid. And I think that just gives Lightning just a little bit more than Sammy Wallace-Joseph gave them last year. So yeah, they look pretty ominous early.
Ella Clark scored more super shots than actual goals. I think like she showed 7 super shots to 6 goals. That's such a big problem, right? For the teams, if Samantha Wallace-Joseph is feeling accurate, she shot 11, and only Rolene Stricker got to 11 as well. It was the only other player that got that high. And I think the other thing that was interesting really about Lightning's front end is that connection between the two of them is really humming in a way where Barry Neal was put on. And I can see why Barry Neal was put on, because actually Fadoji was really starting to ride Ella Clark,
Yeah,
which was what
she was.
actually Jodie Gibson said you ought to do, or people need to look at, is just really tag her and come through when she's trying to go for the ball, because she's got that sort of almost basketball habit of not always running onto the ball. So Barry Neal was really not very effective in this game, and I think that was part of the reason why Pulse were actually able to come
They
in.
got back within one, didn't they, as well? Like
Yeah, they
really,
did. Yeah.
the game really closed up. Pulse did a really good tactical job of getting themselves back into the game. And again, just going into that super shot period, Ella Clark came back on. You know, you're chasing the game a little bit, and you know you have to make 2. And when you've got Ella and Sammy just sort of popping them in like at free will, it was a good game, a very good game. I'm already looking forward to the second installment.
Yeah, and Maseko also came on, and it was interesting that Sam pulled her. That's tough, I think, almost the way that she was pulled off in that fourth quarter super shot period after missing, I think, a couple, like, I don't know if it was 1 or 2, but off she came. And I think that remains, that goal attack position, something that Pulse still need to really work on or figure out how they want to do. And also, I don't know if I'm over postulating, but I was just thinking when these guys match up again, because they're going to, how Pulse's defense will be more prepared, or maybe just sharper on Lightning to really prevent those opportunities from cropping up.
And they did a good job of it last year, right? I think that was the thing. They did a really good job of it, because Ella Clark's a phenomenal super shot shooter. We know that. And I think Pulse did a really good job of that last year. And I think sometimes as well, I think you might have made this point last year, like if you get a hot hand, it's like basketball, right? Like Steph Curry might have an amazing night, and if you're firing him in from 3-point range, there's not an awful lot you can do about it. And you know, I think we both sort of speculated on, like, if you get too good at super shots, what does it do to the actual balance of a proper netball match for purists, right? And it should just be 1 goal and all the rest of it. And I do think that's something. But then it becomes another coaching challenge, right? And how do you find a way around it? And if people found a way to stop it last year to a degree, can they find a way to stop it this year? Their teams will have learned an awful lot, I suppose, from how clinical Lightning have been with it this year and the way they use it, which you've pointed out. I think that's a really good point. Like, get in front and then use it the way you can use it, because you don't have to shoot super shots unless you're good at it.
Yeah, well, and this was the thing. I was talking to a friend of mine about it, just about the game and super shots, and they're not a netball person at all. And they were like, "Well, why wouldn't you take them?" And I said, "Oh, because they're risky." But then when you look at how little risk there is for Loughborough Lightning right now to shoot them, looking at the accuracy, not least of Ella Clark, who is 100%, why wouldn't you shoot them? So actually, that's the bit that somebody or some team or some players really have to stop, because when it gets that comfortable, this is, not to over labor the point, but a super shot is your goal plus a turnover to goal. That's what it's the equivalent of. So you have to keep up with them. If they're going to start shooting, you have to either match them, which is what Pulse did do, like match them with super shots, or have to take ball off them and win it that way, or hope that they miss. So it's a bit of a precarious situation. Loughborough Lightning are dangerous.
I do think these two teams go back and forth really well, though. There's clearly a really good rivalry there. We obviously saw it a lot last year. I have no doubt that both teams will have seen things that they can then take into the next game. It just really makes it all such a fascinating watch. And yeah, we already look forward to the next instalment. We'll spin on. And we'll go through the other three games quite in as much detail. We'll start on Friday night. Thunder 69-55 winners over Dragons down in Cardiff. Few things notable here, but I think the question I want to ask you, Chloe, was it maybe too much to expect this Dragons team to go back to back after pushing Pulse pretty close?
I don't think they would say that it would have been too much for them. I think they would have fancied it. They really did fancy it. And it had all the hallmarks of a banana skin for Thunder. You know, Dragons away in Cardiff on a Friday night is a tough assignment. I just think this really looked like the Manchester Thunder that everyone expects Manchester Thunder to be. I thought it was incredibly structured. The defence particularly was so well set up and staged to do what it does. And a full credit to Millie Carter for her second game to really have a go at stuff. And she slotted in really well and sort of was really disruptive on Dragons. I think Dragons were unlucky to lose Chouane so early.
Yeah, that was
Because I actually think at that point they were kind of toe to toe and it was sort of going along as you kind of expected it would, because you would have, Dragons are definitely not a team to poo-poo at all. We keep saying that. But again, it's that front end for Dragons, like how that substitution with the Arrington and Rowe works. And Neve McCall, again, I'm just going to say it's just such a great signing and really helping Dragons stay competitive with the super shots. But I also want to shout out Lois Pearson in this game. She did get player of the match, but was it the baseline bandit she's called? This was a great performance from her. She was on at wing attack, came off, went back on at goal attack. We started to see a little bit the embarrassment of riches that Thunder have with that front end. By the end, she was cruising. She kind of took the sting out of Jackie Newton a little bit, you know, because Newton has been really impressive so far. She sort of went, okay, Jackie Newton, my turn. And did a really good job of that. But at that point, you know, Thunder are up and kind of laughing and everything's pinging around and it looks really good.
Yeah,
What do you reckon?
I thought they looked. Yeah, I thought they looked really slick. I'm glad you mentioned Millie Carter. I thought she was really good. It's worth pointing out. Still no Leah McCormack and Nicola Smith without a dislocated shoulder. So there's two players who are first choice members of the 10 who are to come back in. There's some really, really good signs of Thunder over the last couple of weeks, just starting now to sort of slot into a little bit of a groove and get that little bit more comfortable, knowing what they're doing. El Cardwell, I think, again, just another game under her belt, just looking like a dominant force. And when you can change it up against the Dragons defense that we said is going to be a nuisance, right? They're going to cause problems. But after a pretty close first quarter, I thought Thunder did a really good job in the second of pulling away and then just stayed in charge. And I do think how Dragons solve their shooting conundrum is probably the big question for them going forward. They've got their 3 games out of the way now. We made a big thing of it that they were playing Lightning, Pulse and Thunder in the first 3 weeks. They lost all 3, hugely competitive, I think, across the 3 of them at various stages. But I think the glaring thing for them is how they make that attack end work in their best interest, because Neve McCall's proven to be a hugely useful asset. Philippa Yarrington was one of the most improved players in the league last year, and Georgia Rowe is that kind of traditional option. So how do you get the best out of those 3 in attack will be, I think, the problem for them to solve as they look to try and get a first win of the season.
Yeah, and we should say we don't really know what the latest is with Chouane's injury, as ever. So that feels important to how George Rowe gets fed. But yeah, I mean, Rowe started really well. That was the thing, the first quarter. You're like, oh, okay. So it's just about them really connecting down. But I think your point to the fact that this is their 3rd tough assignment, they nearly they got within 1 of London Pulse. For the first 3 game stretch, they've done that. Excellent. Okay, now we're looking at the teams that we genuinely want to take, like we absolutely will consider ourselves taking. And I think the rest of them will be, you know, looking at Dragons thinking, oh, that's going to be a tough one. So more to come. And I hope they bring it. You know, I don't want to be sat here all week saying, every week, more to come, more to come. It feels like it's there.
You need to start to put it out, right? That's the point now. You can't keep saying you could do this or you could do that. You need to start to put it out. The other team who are 3 without a win now are Panthers. That was the first game of Saturday's doubleheader in Nottingham. Panthers 49, Mavericks 76. That score from Mavericks, the biggest score of any team so far this season. Still no Ellie Ratu. Hannah Knightbridge continues to replace her. But a pretty dominant showing right off the bat from Mavericks, who got in front. Panthers just looked a little bit confused to me. They still look like that. What about you?
Yeah, I was so impressed by the structure of Mavericks' defense, having sort of with Jody the week before gone, they only got 5 gains in the whole game against Thunder. Like, is that really what we expect from a quality back end too? There was moments where it was like, you shall not pass as Panthers tried their best to come through. So that really set up Mavericks' front end to really punish and get ahead. I think Georginga looked more comfortable, the most comfortable she's yet looked. And that's developing for sure, because I think so far they've been struggling to make that be as
Yeah,
effective as they could. I feel like I'm being quite diplomatic here, but yeah, I think they were classy to get that. And I think Tamsin Greenway's been saying, we've been putting out good bits, we just need to bring it together. And I think that was a pretty complete performance. I mean, as 49-76, that is a huge scoreline. And then for Panthers, staying in the game feels like a big thing for them, on an error front, but also on a penalty front as well. And it's better when Tiana Maturo shoots, I think when the pressure's off Betsy Creek, I think things get better for them. So still a lot of changes as well from Sonia McCloma. So yeah, but this is nearly an entirely new team. So, or definitely the new people in the squad are being made to start. So, Ruth Hughes is being injected and
yeah.
Gabby Coffey as well, it seems like. So, yeah, I think there's still a lot to be figured out there.
I think for me, I saw Izzy Kay, Alana Pullen, and Tammy Fapahunda as really exciting recruits, but I did not expect them to be thrown in right from the start when you have Kira Rothwell, Ruth Hughes, and sort of defensively, both Michelle McGee and Gabby Coffey. And I just feel like maybe that's just asking a bit too much from that trio of next gen athletes who are clearly very talented. But that is a lot to expect 3 next gen athletes to go straight into a starting lineup. Something didn't really shy away from it afterwards. I thought a post match interview, and I like these when they're prepared to own it. She just said it wasn't good enough, like a little bit of a riot act from her, really. We didn't play well enough. We can't let teams do that to us. She said they have to go away and own it. So I'll be interested to see how they shake out come round 4. And we'll get into the preview in due course. So yeah, I think for me, just notwithstanding the fact it's a brand new team, I think they could be giving themselves a better platform to at least start a game and then ease in Pullen, Kay and Fapahunda rather than expect too much from them too soon. But, as we alluded to, we planning to chat to Panthers down the line, and I'm sure there's a bigger picture plan for their young athletes.
I mean, 24 penalties for Charlie Fiddler. I've never seen that. 20 for Tammy Fapahunda. That's 44 between the two of them.
That is a lot. That's
most
44 from 2 players. And wasn't the Dragons Pulse game, which I think everyone perceived as like a very physical game, it was 96 in total in that game?
Yep.
That's
And then when you look at, to just sort of underline the point about Mavericks' defense structures, there were gains. Nearly every player had a gain. So Emma Thacker 1, George Inga 1, Gemma Donoghue 4. And actually, Gemma Donoghue finally felt she arrived. And I felt that she arrived in this game. She's been playing out at wing defence with Jamie Golub at goal defence, but I think she did really well in this game. Izzy Phillips 2, Razzie Okwashi 5, Jamie Golub 5, Hannah Knightbridge 3, Susie Liversidge with 36 feeds. So that was a big day in the office for Susie Liversidge, and a great day for our fantasy team, Paul. That's by the by. But yeah, whereas Birmingham Panthers, 6 gains,
Yeah.
So the stats really sort of do paint the picture, I would say, of how that game kind of went, for sure. And Emily Andrew, 100% in the super shot range with 4 super shots. That's quite nice.
Yeah, good to see that Mavericks defensive end. We spoke a lot about defense in the season previews, didn't we? We felt the Dragons, we felt that Pulse, Thunder, and Mavs were all capable of putting out a defensive unit that was kind of going to capture the imagination. And as Golub, Raz, and Jenna all get kind of more comfortable, they're getting stronger. So that's good for Mavs as far as they're concerned. The last game of the weekend was on Sunday at the Motorpoint Arena. and it's a win for Forest against Rhinos. In the end, a game that they won 61-51. A little bit back and forth over the first half, I would say in particular. But Rolene doing Rolene things. Shout out our fantasy team again, our captain. And a win that means Forest are 3 from 3. So along with Lightning, they're the two teams that are perfect to start the season.
Yeah, it was weird. It was the second week where the second quarter, Nottingham Forest almost lost their heads. It was really strange. So I guess Chelsea Whitman is managing to sort of give them a go in the halftime break. Maria Dixon's still out. Lily Smith came in, and Lily Smith made her debut, number 13 for Nottingham Forest. And I mean, the big one out of this was the result was what it was, of course, and it really did feel like Forest kind of really got their claws into the game into that third quarter where they took that third quarter 13-20. But Jaz Brown was stretchered off in the second quarter, and that really changed the face of the game because she's such a big part of what Rhinos is about, with her and Sam Fisser. Sam Fisser still had an incredible game. Jodie Gibson was commentating that game. She said she's in the Sam Fisser fan club, number 1. I guess that makes me number 2 now. That's fine. But yeah, it looked like a big injury for Jaz Brown. To be taken off the court in that way kind of indicates that. We haven't had any update on that. But it meant that Yomi Wilson sort of came on, and I think Rolene then wasn't so bothered in the way that she had been by her compatriot and Brown, really. And yeah, I don't know. What do you make of that one, Paul?
Yeah, it's hard to get away from the major talking point being Jaz Brown. Obviously, she's a part of Rhino's kind of future and also England. So we await any developments in that regard. I thought Yomi Wilson acquitted herself pretty well when she came on, and just as you were doing there, I was spinning through the stats, and that was 4 games, 1 interception, and 3 deflections for her. And I think for a young player coming in, that's a really encouraging sign. But clearly, Brown, Visser, and Howard is something that had all the hallmarks of being this team's identity. So you keep your fingers crossed for Rhinos in that regard. And yeah, Forest, not an entirely different proposition to what they were last year, right? I think we pointed that out. Just a couple of minor tweaks with Anna Retief coming into the sort of squad, and Anya Williams, and it was Anya Williams who started again. I still think they need to kind of work out what they want to do in the attack end, but when you've got Rolene being just as relentless and ruthless and all of the R's as she possibly can be, I think you're always going to give yourselves a really, really good chance. And they go to Pulse next, which is at the Copper Box. Not to preempt our preview, but I do think for Forest now, with 3 wins under their belt, this is the time we'll see what this Forest team might be about over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I do think there's been a lot on Brie Grayson in this post Rhea Dixon period. You know, now that Dixon is out and we don't really know when she'll be back. It's interesting, the management of Iona Christian and Hannah Layton and that centre wing attack and how they rotate and how they haven't really rotated that much. So I don't know if there's something going on there. It just made me wonder because Iona Christian is quite a natural wing attack as well. And you can then put Layton at centre and then, have Cooper, at wing defence or whatever. But it feels like that's being managed maybe in a way. I'm not sure. Need to sort of understand that picture a bit better. But yeah, I do think it is a flattering start for Forest. They've had an easier run out of all the teams.
That's true. Yeah.
So early momentum is great. Three wins from 3 is great for all this side. But I do, again, not to use your words, not to preempt the Pulse thing, but it does feel like Pulse is going to be a massive test. And they cannot afford the little, I wouldn't call it little, the dips, the troughs they've had in their performance during the games.
Basically, yeah.
No, and then they have been put under pressure. They've also made silly mistakes, and Rolene is a get out of jail free card, and she has, she really found her rhythm again at the end of the game, and really helped because, to Rhinos' credit, Harriet Jones just kept putting them up. She cut the deficit with super shot, and it was a 15-all final quarter. But the damage is done when Rolene can just match what you're doing down the other end. And still the defence on Rolene Stricker, like it is for Lightning, still needs to be figured out a little bit, I think.
Yeah,
she's still a force.
She is still a force, right? And I think that probably moves us quite nicely on to round four. Four more games this weekend. No double header this weekend. So it starts on Friday night. And as it often feels to do at the moment, it starts on Friday night with a Dragons game. This time they're on the road in Sheffield to face Leeds Rhinos. And that's 7 o'clock. Sky Sports YouTube for that. And obviously two teams who will think, which sneaky makes this one of my games to watch this weekend. Both teams will fancy this, which I think makes it a very watchable game.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to phrase it, as you could probably tell in the in the notes. Battle of, I didn't want to call it a battle of the bottom, but off the bottom. Do you know what I mean? It's quite confusing. There's probably a term, Paul. For someone who uses words for a living, I really was without them as I try to express that. But yeah, I mean, one team is going to come out of this with another loss and have 4 losses. So yeah, this is a big game. And I think I fancy Dragons for this. I think this is the one where they can to come away with it. But then I do think whatever happens, Visser is going to have a field day because that Dragons shooting end has its sore points. And this is a defender that is just capable of putting so much pressure on an individual with her footwork, going down, going up, in and around. So, yeah, I do think that down the other end, the Dragons defence will be putting a lot of pressure on that Rhinos front end. And Simone Gordon is still growing, still, finding her feet. So we'll see. We don't know where Chawani's at, but I think for this one, I'm calling Dragons.
I think your point about the injuries is a good one because Jaz, clearly, as we've discussed, a big part of Rhinos, but Chawani's such a big part of linking the two phases of the game together. And I do think they really missed her, as you said, against Thunder. So I think I'm going to slightly favour Dragons as well, which is a bit of a surprise to me because I did fancy Leeds to have a pretty strong season. They've got one win. I need to correct you there, Chloe. They did beat Panthers at the opening weekend of the season.
You're right.
So
terrible.
But I think, yeah, fascinating contest this. And whilst, we'll get to them in a moment, there are a couple of other really attractive looking games. I think the fact that these two will really think they can win this game makes it one for me that I really want to kind of get stuck into on Friday night. Might even get the netball notebook out for it.
Sorry, everyone. Gosh, me making that whole spiel just to be completely corrected by you, Paul.
No.
Yes, well, I'd like to see the netball notebook. Let's have a look and see what you've got. Bring that to the table next week, Paul.
Random
Oh,
stuff.
it's there. There it is.
Notes. Lots of random things. Carrying on through the weekend, 3 games on Sunday, actually. So a Saturday off for those of you who are of that disposition. I might take in a little bit of next-gen action on Saturday. I might go and watch Pulse versus Mavericks next-gen and academy games, which I think looks very exciting. But for the sake of the Super League, Sunday is Panthers versus Thunder. That's in Birmingham at 3:00. Hard to see anything but a pretty comprehensive Thunder win here, Chloe, right?
Yeah, I think so. We'll see again if it's another week without Smith and McCormick.
Yep.
If they're back.
On that, do you think it's worth the risk in a game that Thunder will think they can win, considering Nick Smith's got a dislocated shoulder and presumably Aaliyah's been managed back? Do you think for a game like this, especially when Minnie Carter looked so comfortable, Thunder might be better doing the safe thing?
It depends on the nature of whatever the injury is that they have, I suppose, because it might be, there are 2 ways of looking at it. I completely see the way that you're looking at it. You have to name a 10, right? So they can't have Carter and have both Elliot McCormick and Nick Smith. But then also at the same time, that'd be a good game to ease them both into, especially since for Elliot, it would be the first game of the season, and for Nick Smith as well, like to have been out a couple of games now. So yeah, it sort of depends. It really depends what they're dealing with, which we don't know, but we know with Smith that's what she was dealing with. But what are the consequences of that shoulder? I suppose I'm just a shoulder expert, but for McCormick as well, what that looks like. I would think if they are fit, they would be in and they would be rotated, probably maybe managed, but they would both be invited to have a go, because it is a team where Thunder will feel like they can pull the rotations and figure some stuff out, which I know that doesn't sound very optimistic for Panthers, but we do feel that class is there for Thunder, and this is a team that, has on paper probably the strongest 10. So this is probably the reality of that. So yeah, I don't know for Panthers what kind of, whether it'll be one of those where they look for performance markers in it, and really to reduce that penalty count, because Charlie Fiddler, the week before, we were saying, I'll manage that. And then she's added 5 more penalties to the total that she'd got the week before. So this week, that's just been...
So that's what I was going to say. Looking at it from a Panthers point of view, how do you go into this game? Do you obviously go in to try and win the game, clearly, but then at what point do you start to think about, okay, what do we need from this? Is this a game where you actually maybe put out those more experienced players, because it's going to be tough, right? Like, it's fine to admit that certain games are tougher than other games. And do we see a little bit more of Kira Rothwell, who've not seen loads and loads of so far this season? Do we see a little bit more of Ruth Hughes getting the game going and maybe keeping it close, keeping it competitive for as long as you can? Because if we go by recent evidence, they were blown out pretty heavily by Mavericks, and if they maybe don't get their markers correct, you could see this going in a slightly similar way. We don't like to be too negative, obviously, but you kind of have to deal with the facts, and they've not been convincing so far this season.
Yeah, I think you've said it, to be honest.
Cool. Spinning on then, Mavericks versus Lightning at the Essex Sport Arena. That's on Sunday as well. That's at 4:00. That's the last of the 3 Sky Sports games. We've obviously spoken quite effusively about Mavericks' defence, and we've spoken really well about what Lightning do in the super shot zone. Too simplistic again to look at how Mavericks may have half a chance of stopping these two?
Well, I think Mavericks, maybe along with Thunder, have 3 shooters that can shoot from range, or definitely 2, like Thacker and Andrew really like the super shot in the way that Wallace Joseph and Clark like the super shot. So Mavericks have the power to catch and chase and play with the super shot in the same way that Lightning do. They're definitely not a team that's afraid to pull it. So on that front, I think it's fairly neutral. It'll be about how the ball gets into the circle. I think both teams will be looking at how to undo that. I think the thing for Mavericks is it's slightly more obvious because Susie Liversidge is such a linchpin. So Nat Panagari, we don't know about Beth Durant if she's coming back in, but Nat Panagari, as you said, has been really effective in that wing defence position. So that's going to be a tough day out for Susie Liversidge. So how are Mavericks going to protect her, ensure that she can do the job that she needs to do to get that ball in to keep pace with Lightning? Yeah, and I think down the other end, Tamsin is she's been talking a big game about defending the super shot. So let's see how she teaches her players how to do that. Can I say that? Bit punchy, but I think so. She's got the characters to be able to ask that of
Definitely.
them. So let's see it, I would say.
Yeah, I'm keen to see how the 2 wing attacks match up here, Hannah Joseph and Susie Liversidge. We've spoken, and obviously we kind of allude to the England episode that we've kind of dropped as well. But is there a window of opportunity? It's quite difficult to see anyone breaking into the squad, but you have to say, from a effective wing attack position, Susie Liversidge and Hannah Joseph. I know Hannah certainly has been in the England squad before. Susie is in the sort of the futures and is growing into it. Like, these two feed ball relentlessly into the circle. Like, it feels like they can't be far away from an opportunity. So how they match up in this game against pretty strong wing defences as well, it must be said, might be a nice barometer for where these two might be. I think it's really easy to point at circles and the defensive ends and attacking ends, but I think it's quite an interesting matchup of 2 not underrated wing attacks, but 2 really consistent performers. I think that's probably the way I would describe it.
Yeah, it's interesting because they are at different stages in their careers.
Absolutely,
as well.
yeah.
And Susie came through Loughborough Lightning, so she's a product of that. She won a Super League title, I believe, with them when she was at university there. But then I think it's Hannah Joseph looks great because she's got, she's always had pretty excellent shooters to feed, right? Mary Chollott Samantha Wallace-Joseph, and she has such a great connection with Samantha Wallace-Joseph. It's absolutely something that I would be trying to disconnect if I were not coaching, but offering my considered suggestions to anybody trying. And it's so easy to say that, isn't it? But the other thing for Liversidge that I think makes her someone England should look at is that her ability to play centre, like as much as wing attack, because I think the wing attack position for England, there is personnel in there now, like Lois Pearson is one person that particularly comes to mind, but Liversidge is physically in great shape to battle. So she works in that Mavericks sort of full court structure really, really well. That's something, and that's the same way that Joseph does, right, in Lightning, because I've just literally been on here and talked about the structures. Definitely, and I would consider her beyond wing attack as well, and look at that centre game potentially. She's got legs.
We
We
did
know
say
that
it.
she handles a lot of balls.
We said it in
Sorry,
the
carry on.
season preview, yeah, whether we might see a little bit more of Susie at centre this year. We haven't quite this year. We've seen more of Izzy at centre perhaps than maybe Susie, but I suppose one gives you a defensive option, one gives you an attacking option, and how that shakes out as the season goes on will be something to watch. And then last game of the weekend, again, another fascinating one here. Poles looking to bounce back after that first defeat of the season against a Forest team who have won 3, but as you have pointed out, have yet to be significantly tested. And I suppose we would put Pulse, Thunder and Lightning up there as the significant tests that teams face over the course of the season, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I expect this to be a really tough test for Forest. I think, did they not open their NSL campaign against Pulse, sorry, in last season? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That was and that was a pretty tough loss at the time. But they're a different team. They've obviously come together and grown, and they beat Pulse on the return leg, not if I remember it, in Nottingham. So there is something, if the Forest team can stitch together a proper performance a complete performance I haven't yet seen, then I think they have absolutely everything to challenge Pulse, who are still finding their rhythm, I would say, in a lot of ways. And Roline is still a massive threat for anybody coming up against them. I think I do fancy Pulse for this one, because Rhea Dixon, if she's still missing, that's still a problem just for that feeding in. So yeah, I think it is going to be a big gig for Forest for sure. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think Pulse will trust themselves to bounce back from this. I think they'll take a lot of learnings from the Lightning game, both what they saw that they liked and what they saw that they need to improve on. And to the point about Forest, it's Pulse away in round 4, followed by Thunder away in round 5. So a trip to the Copper Box and a trip to Bellevue. So we'll see how serious this Forest team are. And there's a lot to like about them, right? We've spoken a lot about some of the positives that we've seen from them. But I think we'll know a lot more after sort of rounds 4 and 5. We'll obviously be heading towards halfway in the season as well. But you have to beat what's in front of you. I think that's the point. And Forest have gone out and they've done that. They've set themselves high expectations this year. They want to be in the top 4. They don't think they've hidden away from that fact. So let's see what they're about in this kind of game, and how Pulse maybe deal with Forest is interesting as they go into the game as an attacking force, because I certainly think we've seen more and more of Masako that makes me think you might be not far away from starting now, because she was obviously a late arrival, as many of the international players were, but she's obviously a brand new player as well. So we've sort of seen her minutes gradually increase. Might this be the game we see a start from her? Because I thought there was a lot to like against Lightning. She was part of that part in the third quarter where the game really sort of spun a little bit, and she linked up with Liv Sheen really, really well. And then maybe how Forest solve that conundrum of goal attack, which seems to be a perennial problem. You mentioned it already, against what is one of the best established defensive units sort of in the UK in the Super League. And Hallie and Fumi have got such a great relationship. You've spent much of this season talking about how strong Zara is and how the Forest find a way through that. Can they find a way through that? And Cam Rowling carrying on being Captain Fantastic for the Netball Unlocked fantasy team. Obviously, that's That's the big question.
Most important question, I think, actually. Forget everything else that we've said for the last, I don't know, 80 minutes.
We need a high scoring game here, I might say, because Liv is our goal attack and Rolene is our goal shooter. So 75, 76, we'll take that.
We don't have favourites though, Paul.
I didn't say which way, did I? I didn't say which way. I just said 75, 76.
Very good. Very good.
I think that's it. Any other business? Anything we need to wrap things up with? We've obviously had a busy couple of hours because if you've stuck with us through this, we also did an England emergency pod, which is worth pointing out. If you come to this first, it'll be in the feed once the production team have done their work. But any other business, Chloe?
No, I think we're good, Paul.
I think we're good. I think we are very good. Enjoy your netball week and weekend, and we'll speak to you next time.